All right. Well, Danny, before we get into your amazing documentary, here at Bionic Buzz, we're all about people's passion. Where did your passion from filmmaking come from? Was it a certain movie or documentary you saw or performance or something that was naturally for you as a child?
Oh, that's cool. It's a good question. I started loving music and photography, obviously music first. I remember kind of laying on the bed when my mom was getting ready to go to work. She was a nurse, and hearing Hey Jude. It's like kind of my first musical memory. That's what I remember early on. But, when I got into photography, I got into the photograph as a document, and I loved documentary photography. And some of my heroes in that format were Danny Lyon and Robert Frank, and they were making documentary films at the time. And I found it really intriguing, and I thought to myself that at some point or another in my life that I'd give that a go.
That's amazing. I love this documentary so much because, I mean, for my passion for music came when I was late 91, 11 years old, seeing Smells Like Teen Spirit for the first time. And it's just like, I wanted to start riding my bike to record stores, buying cassettes at the time and eventually CDs. So this really documentary captures that whole alternative rock scene during that time period. It's
Yeah.
amazing because like every other great documentary you're interviewing other people to talk about someone who's no longer around, like the montage of heck. This is all Shannon's voice. I had no idea he recorded himself almost every day for how long was it, like 5 or 6 years or something like that?
Yeah. 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 I was around Blind Melon a lot. When my career was starting in the early 90s, I met them when I was on the road photographing the band live. And
Oh,
it was,
very cool.
yeah, so it was live, Blind Melon, uh, Big Audio Dynamite, and Public Image Limited. And it was the MTV 120 Minutes tour. And
Oh,
I
man.
met Blind Melon.
Yeah.
We became fast friends, and I did a publicity shoot for them shortly thereafter. And then I started hanging out with them on the road, going to their shows, in the recording studio. Went to Europe with them, and they just really invited me in, and it was a really great experience. And so,
Okay. So you got to
um,
see Shannon record himself and everything going on, right?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was down for the Soup sessions in at Kingsway in New Orleans, and
Uh-huh.
I played harmonica on the Nico record after Shannon passed.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, I played on Hell, that song Hell.
Yes,
There's like
very
a
cool.
harmonica riff in the beginning. Yeah,
Dude, you're a rock star too. Wow.
in my own mind.
Well, cool. So you had protection to it. I'm just curious, how many hours of footage did you have to go through? Did Shannon record?
Well, it was about 250 hours of high 8 tapes, the
Mm-hmm.
digital videotapes, and then 50 hours of I think 50 hours of answering machine tapes and stuff too. And I got to give
Okay.
credit where credit is due, because Taryn and Colleen Hennessy, Taryn Gould and Colleen Hennessy were my co-directors, and they really did the grunt work on looking through all the footage and collecting it in a more cohesive fashion to share with me. And then, we collaborated from there, and pushed and
Mhm.
pulled, and it was really a great experience.
I love it. I'll talk about some of my favorite moments in it. I totally forgot that Shannon was in the "Don't You Cry" music video for Guns N' Roses, and he also did some vocals, I guess, on that track. So it was cool seeing him in the studio. Like, they grew up. I guess Axl Rose was friends with Shannon's sister back in Lafayette, Indiana. So that was a
Correct.
cool moment. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. 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 That was cool. But I
Okay.
think you gotta watch it. You gotta watch it again, and then you gotta watch it again. And for me, anyway, like I still discover new things as
Uh-huh.
it's as when I watch it. Especially with other people. When you share it with other people, and you sit down and you watch it with them, and you're like, oh my god, like I never even saw that the first time.
uh, a really great moments when the band they signed a record contract on top of the Capitol Records building, which I used to live in LA. So that, and
Oh
seeing the
yeah.
whole landscape with that, and seeing just how happy when their life was going to change moment. So
Right. Right.
yeah.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. And then there was a moment where it was just vocals only. I guess they recorded, I guess it was in Seattle, and he was just Shannon singing the No Rain vocals just by himself in the studio. That was
Yeah.
pretty epic.
Yeah, that was epic.
And then obviously there was like the huge success from the music video, and you got to see shooting behind. My take it from watching the other interviews after that with him, he wasn't really too happy with that music video because it kind of put them in like this happy pop kind of genre that he wasn't too fan of. Maybe you could elaborate more on that, or since you know him.
I think when anybody gets a hit song and they
Yeah.
have to play it everywhere all the time, they get
Mhm.
tired of it, you know? And it's a blessing and a curse, you know, you think about it, you know, it's the song that set them on their path, but it also potentially, you could argue that it ruined them as well, because everybody just was expecting another No Rain, and people would just want to hear that song. And you
Yeah,
know,
because
and
most of
you
their other
know,
stuff's a lot darker than that. So
yeah,
it's all,
and
you know.
and more rocking and
Yeah,
psychedelic. And you know,
yeah.
you look at the Soup record, which got 1.5 stars in Rolling Stone, and I got to be
Mhm.
honest, it's just way beyond that. That just, to me, that's lazy journalism in my
Yeah.
opinion. And you know, you can, you know, somebody probably just didn't like whoever got the gig that week. You know, when Rolling Stone was saying, "Hey, Joe, you know, review the Blind Melon record," and he was probably like, "Oh
Ah,
shit, I hate that B-girl song," like, you know, right? And then he's like, got to listen to it. And he's already formulated his opinion, and little does he realize that his one, you know, uneducated opinion was going to really devastate this band, you know.
oh yeah.
I would think when Rolling Stone gives you 1.5 stars, and pre social media, where you could count on your fans to say, "This is a great record, we love it, this is what we love about it." You didn't
Mhm.
hear that stuff back then. You had to
Yeah.
rely on everyone had to rely on a journalist, and this, you know, this particular, you know, I'm certainly not blaming the anything other than a bad review on this guy, but you know, it really hurt these guys. And I think, you know, at that point, you know, people listen to someone like that. And I'm over talking about it, but I think, you know,
Mhm.
it's interesting how things have changed. And you know, and to go back to that, you know, here's a guy who was ahead of the curve. He was self-documenting himself before you had a cell phone, right? Here's a
Yeah.
guy who, like, he had to he had to plug the camera in, he had to charge the batteries, he had to buy tapes, he had to keep the tapes, and he had to like save them where somebody could find them, you know. And you think an unorganized musician type, artist type, would have definitely lost the tapes, right?
Oh
Or they would have
yeah.
been like in a moldy box somewhere and they'd
Left
be
in a hotel
unusable.
room, you know, or something
But
like
no, man, he was like
that.
documenting everything. He was labeling all the tapes, numbering them, putting them in a box, bringing them home, giving them to Lisa, his girlfriend,
Yeah.
and she was, you know, putting them away and saving them for us. So
Oh, that's awesome. Speaking of
yeah,
Rolling Stone, I had no idea at one point that, you know, their famous cover of Blind Melon, it was only supposed to be Shannon at one point. So it was a fun
yeah,
moment where he kind of actually hides the camera in the dressing room, hearing the band kind of talk
yeah,
S about it, basically. About
yeah.
it.
Well, that gives you insight as to the way Shannon was. He
Yeah.
was a funny, sneaky character, and
Yeah.
he liked to make people uncomfortable, and it brought him great joy. And he was a fun person to be around, you know. And then,
Hmm.
you know, he could be a dark person to be around too. But
Oh, yeah.
that's what I think about this film. I think it's a film that you don't have to be a Blind Melon fan to appreciate it. I
Honestly,
think,
I'm
you
not a
know,
huge Blind Melon fan, you know.
yeah.
I could
And
probably only
so,
name a couple of their songs, but
yeah,
honestly, I thought this was better than Montage of Heck, and this is a diehard Kurt Cobain Nirvana fan. Saying that,
yeah,
so because
yeah,
there's nothing
yeah,
anything like that, because it is just Shannon's voice the whole time, and
yeah,
there's some you can overhear some of the interviews and stuff, but he really captures that moment, what's going through.
yeah,
Speaking of Kurt
yeah,
Cobain, it was definitely cool when Shannon talked about when he first found out, you know, Kurt died. I
yeah.
believe it was on his skiing trip in Mammoth, which they end up writing Soup, and I guess there's a clip of, was that him recording the demo up in the mountains, or?
Yeah, you
Mhm.
know, I'll tell you, I know where Shannon was when he heard Kurt Cobain died because I was with him.
Okay, well, do tell me all the details.
Yeah. So they were playing Letterman that night.
Okay,
Blind Melon was on Letterman, and Shannon and the band were hanging out.
so this was
Uh,
April 8th, 1994, then, right?
yep.
Yeah.
And we were hanging out, I think at my place in New York City or at their hotel. And Shannon and I were walking over to the sound check, to the Letterman thing. And it was Shannon and I guess we got separated from others. I don't know if any of the other band was with me, but I know it was Shannon and I. And these two young girls came up to us and they were all teary-eyed and they said, "Oh my gosh, Shannon, I'm so happy to see you. It's just like such a sad day for music." And we were like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Oh, you didn't hear? Yeah, Kurt Cobain had killed himself." And we were like, "What?" And then he went back and he drew a question mark on his forehead. And he played the Letterman show in Kurt's honor.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna look that up now.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow. So
Yeah, it was pretty
and
heavy.
then of course he wrote part of the lyrics, I guess, Soup, or maybe the whole thing was like dedicated to Kurt. And I like that you had the Woodstock performance of that song in the doc too. So
Yeah. Yeah, that was cool. And if you watch, well, two things. One is I hope that it makes you curious as a music fan, and someone of your age. You look pretty young to me.
Oh, I'm 40. I don't look like it.
Yeah, well,
I was 13 where Kurt died. I remember coming home from school and my mom telling me the news. So
yeah. Well, I hope it's got you curious to look into some more of the Blind Melon music. You know, like
I did, honestly. Like I said, I only knew a certain tracks beforehand, and obviously No Rain. But I honestly went on Apple Music afterwards and listened to a lot of Soup, and I was like, wow, this is actually a really good album. I didn't really know too much of it at the time. So
I like to hear that. That's one of our goals. One of our goals, and the other goal is to let people know that, addiction and mental health are issues that you can talk about these days and you can get help for. And we've partnered with Music Cares. Because, when you're 28 years old, you think you're an adult and you're not, and you've lived your life as a musician and you've gotten to play around for a living and, but it's, you're in hotel rooms and you're traveling and you're lonely a lot of times. It's like, it's not as, as glamorous as people think. And I think we've learned from our education from Music Cares that, that creative types, musicians, are 14% more susceptible to mental health and addiction issues. And so, we also want people to know that there's help out there and people who are thinking of them and want to help out. So.
Wise words, and I hope this introduce a new generation to Blind Melon too. And last question though, what was his? He didn't like New Orleans. Was that like he said? I kind of caught him. I might have to go back and rewatch it. So because they recorded Soup in New Orleans, right? Or
yeah, he loved New Orleans.
Okay.
And but it didn't love him. He always got in trouble when he went there. That was the thing.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, he was always getting in trouble when he was in New Orleans, just because, it's that kind of town. If you've ever been there.
Oh yeah. I know.
It's madness.
All right. Well, everyone, check out All You Can Say documentary right now on VOD. And anything in the works you're allowed to talk about before I let you go?
Well, I did want to say that what we're doing on this release is a virtual cinema, and we're partnering up with music venues and record stores, independent record stores, and by buying the film and watching it, you're actually helping to support those as well. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing is, I have a gallery in Asbury Park, New Jersey. Nice. It's a great spot where we are practicing social distancing and masks and only letting a few people in, but it's a gallery of my photographs from Nas and Tupac up to Johnny Cash and Bruce Springsteen.
Oh, wow.
Pearl Jam and Fish and everyone in between that I've photographed over the years.
I used to love going to Asbury Park. There used to be a skate and surf music festival there back in the
day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I lived in Maryland. I used to drive up. So very cool. Is there a website or social media we can stay up to date with you for everything?
Yeah, my Instagram is at DannyBones64. And the film is at All I Can Say Film. And you can watch the film at oscilloscope.net, which is OSCILLISCOPE.net. Oscilloscope. Same folks who put out who helped put out that new Beastie Boys film. So it's good. Cool. We're in good company. They're great people, and I appreciate them and everyone else who worked on the film.
All right. Well, Danny, thank you so much for your time to talk to me, and keep up the amazing work.
Thanks, man. Great
All
talking
right.
to a true music fan. I appreciate it.